Hello and welcome to Uncovered, the podcast with your host, Jason Irving. Join me in a journey to understand what's truly happening in your world and the world around you. This is not about how you're living life on the surface. It's about what's truly driving you from under the covers. I'm going to take you on a journey to deeply uncover the reason why you are here, the ultimate purpose in your problems and the way that they have shaped your life up until now. See, I believe you have a purpose, and your problems are the highway towards ultimate realization of that journey towards freedom and the reconnection of your true self. I've been told I have a different spin on most things, and I'll be giving you my understanding of life, love, and what we're all here for, purpose. To get the best out of this podcast, drop what you already know so you can discover what's beyond you. So join me, let's play this game of life and bring on liberation, transformation, and change. Let's do this.
Hi Jason, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad. How are you?
I'm good too, thank you.
We haven't done a podcast for a while, have we?
No, we haven't, because there was Christmas and then we were both working from home and now we're back here. And
yeah. So we're gonna be talking about breakthrough. Now, our academy is called the Wellness Breakthrough Academy, and so it's probably it's really interesting when I talk about breakthrough. I talk about it all the time. I talk about landing this change, and a lot of people have mini breakthroughs through the academy. They have these little breakthroughs, and they're taking little changes. And this is what's really, really important, because the little breakthroughs are just as important as the bigger ones. It gives you the bite-sized chunks, and then there's the bigger breakthroughs, and they're ones that sort of land things and sort of lock things and anchor things down. And I just want to talk to you, Filia, about your experience that you had just recently with the breakthrough that you've had. Now, just a little bit of background. Filia's never really dedicated herself to she was terrified of a future. Didn't want to go too far down the track, did you? It was always short-term thinking.
5 years max.
5 years max. Don't go too far. Day to day. And you were always quite anxious until something changed in you a couple of weeks ago. So tell us what it feels like to actually go and have a breakthrough and have that experience where something just landed in you.
So it was interesting. I was talking to someone about this morning, and I said it's kind of like you have that moment where you feel like there's two sides of you fighting internally. The side that kind of just is like, no, don't change, and this other side that's like, yes, go for it, this is the right thing. But the one that was going like, no, don't change, like don't go there, was being stronger. So I basically had the choice, like in a way, like I could have just said like this is it and walked out, or I could have listened to that other voice that was saying like go and change. So eventually, I don't even know what happened, but it was one thing that you said to me then, eventually it just kind of like landed in me, and I don't know, it's really, really hard to even describe it with words, but it just felt like all of a sudden I just like grounded and it all just made sense. I was just like, oh God, what the hell? Like the complete kind of attitude and the complete kind of thinking in that moment just changed from that really stubborn type of person, like I'm right, you're wrong, to oh my God, I see what you mean now, and I've totally misunderstood everything that you said from this perspective of pain beforehand. And so it was just this massive moment, and I was just like, oh, this is not going to last, just like tomorrow I'll be back to where I was before. But it didn't happen that way, and it's actually really, really cool. So that's probably the best I can describe it, like from the kind of level of physical sensations and stuff.
Because it's intangible, isn't it? And a lot of the time when you break through, I was just talking to a lady I've just done a podcast with, her name's Adriana. She had a massive breakthrough with me with regard to pain. So it was one of those really tangible things. You've been in pain all your life, and then it goes in 5 minutes. So that's a breakthrough that you can actually. It's tangible, because it's like pain to no pain.
Yeah.
Perfect. Now we know there was pain here, and now I don't have it, and she's had pain all her life physically. And then when we look at something like this is psychological, right? Entrapment that you had to psychological liberation. And when it's psychological breakthrough, no one can see it. right? Filia's the same person as she was 5 minutes ago, and no one gets who she's become until later. People go, "Oh, you're really calm.
You've changed.
Oh, you've changed. What's happened inside of you?" And like people start asking questions around the type of manner and the behaviour. But while that's happening, people are so used to you being the Filia of what you used to be that people are just expecting that person to arrive at the door, aren't they?
Yeah, and I guess it's easy to kind of like go back into that as well, you know, and especially in certain situations where people know you really well, you've known them all your life, and they're just like, oh, well, this is what she's like, so this is what she will be like when we talk.
Yeah.
But then also just being able to be like, no, I'm actually a bit different now, and yeah, it's really interesting to see and observe yourself as well, how then you're like, oh, okay, when I talk to this person, I go more into that kind of patterning and all these kinds of things, which is like much more, which I'm just more aware of now.
Yeah, and we can talk about that nice and briefly around, you know, you had a chat to your brother.
Yeah.
And then you got a little bit old you, because this is what we do within family structures.
Yeah, and he was like, it was not so much like I think about like talking to him, it was more about like what we talked about was just like some of the topics, you know, like war, etc., that then like kind of pulled me down again into that state of fear, like, oh my God, what's going to happen in the future? I'm not safe type of thing. So, you know, and that like kind of then triggered that again. I was like, and I could see how that like got me into a completely different state of mind.
Yeah.
But I understand as well what you're saying, like about family. It can really easily get you into like put you into a box.
100%, because we're looking at a situation, and this is not about you. What's your brother's name?
Nicholas.
This is not about you, Nicholas. This is about how externalization can actually make us turn into our old self. And so you being from Germany, and then there's a war, right? So that is going to trigger your DNA, right? It's going to trigger a part of you to say, hey, there's war. And I was part of a war that I had nothing to do with, right?
Obviously.
You know, but we have this idea that goes into the human psyche, and then we externalise. And the more we're externalised, it's harder to break through. Because like what's happening at the moment with the war being exposed at the moment, it's making people feel frightened, and it's making people feel more externalised. And the more externalised we feel, the more frightened we are.
I think COVID was a good example of that as well, right? Like everyone was just, and still is, you know, anxious all the time, including me. It's just like, it was an intense time, and now we have the next thing, and what's going to come afterwards. And
that's right. And from what I've seen, history-wise, listeners, is that when I was a kid, I could run around the street and everything was fine. And then they started with people stealing the kids, or people doing something harm to the kids, and then now no one's out on their skateboards, no one's out doing anything anymore. It's like a ghost town in all the streets. It was never like that when I was a kid. Everyone just ran around. Now the thing is, media is putting, if you're more externalised, and what I mean by this is that you don't have a big connection in your inner heart, you're going to struggle with life circumstances more. Right? So when we struggle with life circumstances, because we need external circumstances to make us feel safe, secure and okay. And so our job through breakthrough is to connect more internally, so we feel more responsive when things happen. And that's the journey of trying to figure out how to break through. And there'll be particular patterns, listeners, that you'll all have that create a panic and a concern for your well-being and safety. We all have them, whether it's not having enough money, whether it's worried about the petrol prices rising, or whatever people do that make people panic. Right? I remember in Canberra, I was so proud, Filia. I was like, our home is not buying toilet paper like everybody else, because all the toilet paper was missing, because everyone, for some reason, thought toilet paper was a must.
Yeah.
Right?
It was so funny.
It was so weird. That was the only thing that was just going out. And then what I found out is my mum was buying and hoarding toilet paper and storing it at our house. And I was like, oh my God, I went downstairs and I saw all this toilet paper and there was rolls and rolls. I was like, oh, what are you guys doing? Because there was,
odd.
it was such a weird thing that Australian people were doing.
Yes.
Was buying the toilet paper, thinking that our asses need to be clean for us to be safe.
Yeah, it was so odd. And then when you just really needed toilet paper, you just felt so awkward, like walking around in the shop. You're just like, oh God, like people probably think I'm hoarding as well.
Yeah. And look, I think this is a really big challenge, guys. It's like, there's a no in all of us, right, to change, right? And we will defend that no with everything that we've got. And there's 3 types of ways of approaching that no. We can internally combust and not let anyone know what's going on, so no one gets to know I'm more of an internal combustor. If you want to know what I do, I'm more internally combust. I'm learning to not do that over time, and I'm doing far better than I ever have since I started the academy. Then there's the people who blame, right?
That would be me.
So they'll blame, project and say, this is happening because of you, because of your circumstances, and you're affecting me this way.
That's what I did with you.
Yeah.
With the breakthrough. I was like, oh, Jason's fault.
It's all his fault, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the third one that just goes, I get this, I'm just going to change it. Right? And so it doesn't really matter where you go. You've just got to know that to break through, you've got to figure out and find your way to get down to the other side. Because we have this big no in us, it's very hard for us to change that big no. So we've got to learn to figure out our responsive way, and not everyone does it, right? So when you broke through and you did it the second way, which is blame and get angry, it could have gone either way, couldn't it?
Yeah, I could have just walked out.
You could have just walked out.
Goodbye.
I've had enough of you. But in that moment, you broke through and realised how you could be different, right? And then what that does is it creates the ability through your next breakthroughs to know that there's another pathway. There's that third pathway that you can meet to break through. And then the next breakthroughs don't have to be so painful, right?
Yeah.
And usually that if it's that second where we want to blame and project and say it's someone else, that's when the breakthrough is so painful.
Yeah.
And it's so hard on us that we even though we know deep down it's not right, we can't see anything other than us being right.
And it feels like a downward spiral. You know, it's not like it just kind of like became like this one day or something. It just kind of feels like the more you kind of pull yourself into it, it just goes deeper and deeper into it. Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, I don't know how to get out of here anymore. Yeah. And then it was everyone and everything else can change around me, but not me. It's not my fault. It's just, you know, it's this thing that's not right and this thing's not right. And then afterwards, after the breakthrough, I looked at my life and I'm like, what was I on about? Like, my life's great.
And this is the thing, listeners, is that, look, we've got some really tough things happening in the world at the moment, and you could be directly affected by those things. And if you are, the most important advice I can give you is make sure you learn as best you can to be as responsive to all the situations that are happening right now, so you can bring your best you to the table. Because look, if you're directly directly affected, then the thing is, you could blame and say the world's at an end, right? If you can do part 3, you're going to have a far better breakthrough, and you're going to find ways to adapt to situations more quickly and more readily. So I'll give you an example of this. When COVID hit, the restaurants that actually started doing takeaways straight away had a thriving business, and now they've got a double business. They have people who can come into the restaurants and they do takeaways still. So they're earning double the amount of money. the best thing is that they can do more takeaways. Right, it's easier to do takeaways than it is to actually have people seated, because you can actually go, you've only got a limited amount of people that you can service in a restaurant. But if you've got really good food and you supply a service, you've got that. That's the adaptability. So those people were able to not just keep their businesses open, turn them into a even more thriving business. So what you've got to learn to do, listeners, is that if you want to break through, the best thing you've got to learn to be able to do is become more adaptable to life circumstances and not be prepared. Like you see, the scouts. They have their their kit bag of things, and they're ready to go in, and they've got everything prepared, their first aid kit and everything like that. Yes, you need to be prepared in that sort of instance for going for a walk in the bush, the jungle, or the forest. When we're in life, you've got to. There's one thing that you can't prepare for, is something that goes left field. So those left field moments, the only way that you can prepare for them is to be psychologically adaptable.
And that's exactly what we're doing here as well. Like in the academy, like when we mentor people, you can't prepare for the mentoring sessions. It's not like, we have a follow-up consultation, we'll talk about this thing. It's whatever the people need in that moment. So you can't be like, today we're going to work on this, unless they want you to tell them something to work on. But in the beginning, that really threw me off, because I was always just like, what do you mean I can't prepare? Like, I was always prepared.
And this is the thing with helping. If you're in the personal development space, I've had, when I was a healer and doing stuff in the academy, when people would tell me their stories, I'd be like, right, well, you can't prepare for what's going to come out of someone's mouth. If you are adaptable and psychologically stable, then you can support someone's pain really, really easily, because most people can't support people who are in pain if they don't know the pain themselves. And I don't believe that you have to know someone else's experiences or be raped so then you can help a rapist or a rapee, let's say. You don't have to be prepared to have that experience to help people. What you've got to be prepared to do is actually hold space, be there, and show people a level of awareness and safety so they can break through. And I think this is really essential, listeners, is that if you're in a place where you're wanting to break through and you've been stuck for a really long time, if you're trying to listen to the sound of your own horizon and your own voice, you're going to get nowhere. Right? And you were getting nowhere with your thoughts, were you?
No, it was just like going in circles, like the merry-go-round. So.
And so you've got to be prepared to do one thing. And I was talking to Adriana, who we were just chatting to, like her attitude was, before she joined the academy, she was like, I need to find someone. So she was already searching for me. And then I said something to her. I said, just finding me will be the biggest transformation you'll ever get. I don't know why I said it. I never said it to anybody else who's joined the academy. I said it to her. And I don't know why I said it, because every time I speak to her, she just keeps constantly listening and breaking through. And that's the thing that's actually quite scary for the ego. Is the ego wants to stay the same, and the higher part of you, or the connected part of you, or the growth part of you, whatever you want to call it, wants to grow. And they're battling. As you said, it's like two forces battling on the inside. Yeah,
it's like the angel and the devil on the shoulder in a way.
Yeah, it is. And so breakthrough is challenging on your own. And I know I've broken through a lot of my barriers on my own, and I don't actually recommend it.
And I think you're one of the few people who actually can do that, because I think for most people, just from my own experience, I'm just like, I don't know how I would have gotten out of that by myself. It probably would have just been, I could have left and then would have played the pattern again in a different environment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I said to you. You're not going to change this if you leave. You got to know what you're doing, right? And I think this is where, I have that in me to be able to be my own breakthrough. And it's actually quite rare. And when I think about the experiences that I've had, I've gotten help all the way through my journey. Quite often that help has actually been not helpful. Right? And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I've managed to get the wrong help again. And you'd think someone like you know how aware I am and all of those sorts of things, and you'd think someone this intuitive and this aware would actually be able to get the right people. I'll tell you what, it's not. When you're like, no matter who you are, when you're in your own mud, you've got dirty lenses and you don't see the way out. So I quite often, I would attract people who are not the right people to work for me and all of those sorts of things. And I realised that I was creating the problem. And this is what I realised with you. My biggest breakthrough was not being so adaptable as a boss. Because I just wanted people to be happy, but I wasn't giving direction. I wasn't being clear. And I realised I was and I got called out by Anya. And then my big breakthrough was like being listened to last week. Or the week before, I can't remember what it was. Was it last week or the week before?
I think
week before.
The week before, the week before. I was like, oh, when was it again?
Yeah, so it's just like that experience of knowing that, when you see breakthrough, it comes in all manner of forces. And when I was thinking like what I'd experienced in my own form of breakthrough is being my adaptability can be my greatest weakness as well, right? Because I've always adapted to other people's needs because I see pain. And that's been a problem for me because I've never authoritatively voiced what I've needed in my life. That was the first time I did that in a work environment, to say this is what I need. And I did it with Laura before you, and I was like, okay, and I do this with Anya too. And it's really interesting to know sometimes your breakthrough can be just saying what you need in your life to other people and actually getting them to listen and say, okay, great, I'm gonna follow through on what you've said. So what I want to hand to you guys is that there's a couple of places where breakthrough occurs, and most people look at breakthrough as a doing thing, and doing things just a doing thing. As I've spoken many times in the academy, the doer a great implementer does not mean that they've broken through the most important part, which is the psychological part. And what I mean by that's mental and emotional breakthrough. And if you can break through those two barriers, then the living of the life becomes a lot easier, because a lot of people are empty creators, right? And I know when I thought I was going to be healed by being a healer all those years ago and working full time, I thought everything was going to change, and I was unhappy because I wasn't in the right marriage, I wasn't happy coming home, things weren't great for me, and I was just pretending and adapting that everything was okay and no one knew. So I just felt alone. And my biggest breakthrough is sharing where I'm at and where I'm feeling. And this is where I've had to learn that, and learn to create my own psychological change, because everyone expects me to be okay. Because I'm the healer and the leader, and I teach all the concepts, so people think that I am living them all, even though I say I'm not. They say, yeah, but you're Jason. Right? As a human being, I've got problems like everybody else, and I started the year off feeling depressed, and I was like, okay. People who don't know the Academy's version of depression would go, oh, is he okay? The Academy's version of depression, just so you know, is to look at your stuff and have the depth. And there is a podcast on depression if you want to have a look, have a listen to it. Okay, so the psychological, emotional part is the tricky part, because it's the intangible part that people don't necessarily notice straight away. So you're walking down the street, you're a physical person, but no one knows what you're thinking and you're feeling when you're walking down the street, because that's hard to gauge.
Absolutely. And we tend to just always look on the outside, right? Like, at least that's what I was doing. Just like, oh, I kind of want to feel like this, so these are the things I need to do. And this is the state, like, you know, it needs to be in for me to feel that way. But that was like the wrong way around.
Yeah.
So it comes,
It makes sense though, because look, we have to do a bit of both.
Yeah.
Right? We have to do to be, we have to be to do.
Yeah.
Right? And the essential state is, if we're doing the doing part and that's all we get, we never get to the state of beingness that we need to be.
Yeah.
And it disappears very, very quickly, because you get the state of being for a fleeting moment and then it's gone. It's learning how to be, and that's building up your insights. You know, and that takes, listeners, it takes a lifetime to build up your insights. It doesn't happen over you know, the academy stuff that we do. Like our work actually helps really build your stuff from the inside out. At the end of the day though, that's a lifetime of work, because life's going to do curveballs, right? So imagine this, Filia, if I'm on my way home, or to pick up the kids today, which I'm doing, and then something happens to Liam at school and he dies. What do you think I'm going to feel?
Oh, everything.
Yeah,
so many things.
And so many people have these experiences every day. Someone passes away.
Yeah.
And you know, and we're going to be hit by curveballs all the time. And you know, and then I don't know how I'd feel. Where would I be? Because I don't know that experience. But I've worked with people who've had their kids pass and have heart attacks, all sorts of things, or they've been like 5 years old, and their parents have both died in a car crash, and they've had to be, you know, looked after by a parent, or they've had to be fostered. Like one of the Academy members is Indian, and he came to Australia because some people came and picked him out of a bunch of people to say, I'm going to take you to Australia. And you know, he went to India to go and try and find his heritage. Couldn't find his heritage. So imagine that experience. Right? So we just don't know where our world's going to be and what we're going to do. So at the end of the day, guys, you know, you're going to have really difficult times in your life. And I think personal development is the only way that really you can actually help yourself when you have a massive hiccup. That's life, right? And we're all going to go through upheavals. Some are going to be more difficult than others. And what are we going to do if we've done absolutely nothing? And you know, when I've worked with people who've done no personal development when I was a healer, and they'd say, someone would say, go and see this guy, he'll help you out. You never know how quickly or how slowly you can do something. So there's a guy in our academy, and I've done a podcast with him. His name's Mike Halliday, and I call him the Grief Master. Now, he had his wife commit suicide. He saw his wife 2 days later or a day later blown up like a balloon in the car. So imagine that visual. Your last visual is the last visual. So I'm just thinking about my nan on a slab, dead, and me giving her a kiss, and she was cold. I'll never forget that moment. He'll never forget that moment until the day he dies. The thing is, though, he got the right help, and I helped him break through so quickly. He's got this amazing new partner. He's got a Brady Bunch life. There's lots of kids in the mix, and he's happy, right? And if he didn't meet me and decide to take a chance on himself, the breakthroughs that he's had with the difficulties of his experience of trauma, he would be a mess. He'd still be a mess. He'd be in depression, and who knows where he would be right now. And I look at someone's life like that, and that's one of those real left field moments. You come home and your wife's committed suicide, knowing that she was not stable. At the same time, you're not expecting to experience something like that, are you?
No, 100% not.
Right. So for all of you guys, you might not have had an experience like Mike. You might have had an okay experience. You might just have had your parents not accept you or whatever that's happened. You've got to start filling your cup up. And it takes courage. It took courage for you to listen to another side of yourself.
Yes,
right?
100%.
Yeah, and I think this is really interesting. I think there's another voice inside of you that's talking to you all the time saying, you can be different. You can think this way. But when are we going to listen? Right? Because we're quite often defined by our pain and our suffering, not defined by the breakthrough that we can have.
And the potential is there. Like, there's so much potential, right? I think I listened to a podcast the other day, which was really interesting. It was talking about stories and like movies and novels and these kinds of things, and how they can give us the courage to do things because they allow us to experience situations without really experiencing them.
Yeah.
But like through someone else. But oftentimes you leave a movie or something feeling inspired. You're just like, oh, I could be more. I could do this and. Like they were so courageous. I want to be like that, and you can. Right?
Yeah.
So it's actually really cool to think about that, because you can just you just gotta allow yourself. It's really hard to explain.
Yeah, well, it is, I think when it comes down to it, the people who have changed their lives or done something different, or you had a massive, like, even coming to Australia and living, that's a massive change. Like, to come to another culture, to immerse yourself into another country, not knowing what sort of work you're going to do, like all those sorts of things, that's a courageous breakthrough within itself. But you don't think about it when you do you?
No.
Because most people stay in their own country and live in their own culture, like me, who are feeling comfortable. You had to move from one place to the next. And even though it's great, it's still a breakthrough within your own human psyche to feel, am I going to be accepted? Are people going to like me? And all of these sorts of things that we do when we're moving countries and doing something very, very different. Like, 2 languages, or maybe, is it just 2?
Yeah, just 2.
Just 2. And, having to speak in English as your first language now, not your second.
Yeah.
And know how to do those things. And I think we've all got to learn how to break through in our own language, right? And I think what people get really stuck on, it's about to bust, is comparing ourselves to others, thinking we've got to break through like somebody else. And that's not, your breakthrough is yours, and then the job of someone to help you is to help find the way in which you're here to break through.
Yeah, I think everyone does it in their own time, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I said to you, I admire your patience, because you're just so patient with everyone, and just giving them their time, just being there for their journey, and not being like, I'm going to force this on you because I can see how you could be, and I'm going to just be like, this is what you should do. And so it's a really, really fine art there.
Yeah, it is. I was talking to one of the guys in the academy, Rob is his name, and we were talking about how I said, it's a challenge. Like, for me, sometimes it feels like I've got someone's life in my hands and I'm guiding them to do something. Like, I said to him to move to Canberra, and I could see that everything would change, and him and his partner have moved to Canberra now, and things are working out really well for them. Things are starting to really shift and change. To actually help someone break through, he's so happy in himself. He was in a mess before, and take the guidance from somebody else and then get the life and that they're wanting to lead now is through the guidance of someone else's voice. And when you're that person giving the guidance, it can be challenging. It's like, is this right? Is this going to help? Is this going to be the right thing? And I know from my own experiences of helping people, I've quite often gotten people on track. It is one of those challenges. And I think for you guys who are listening right now is don't listen to the sound of your own voice, get help. Even when I've gotten help, even if it's been the wrong help, it's guided me into the right way. I ended up in the psych ward as my first adventure to help. Wasn't the best sort of experience that you would get. I don't help people get into the psych ward with what we do. We do everything that's related to pain in such a beautiful, elegant way, whereas they were just hitting me with a pillow of pain. And it was pillow punching time that time when I started. That was the work that was involved. So I think we've got to learn how to reach out, get that help, and then follow through with what someone else has got to say, and then try it. And that's the advice I can give you. Try someone else's advice, and if it doesn't work, at least you've broken through from doing your advice. Yeah, even if it's not the right help, it's going to get you in the right direction for your journey, because at the end of the day, you don't want to stay where you are. You want to move, and making sure that you take a leap of faith of change. The big mistake that we make, I think, is looking for the result as actually focusing on the journey. And if we look for the result, we're never going to be satisfied. So breakthrough is not about result, it's about journey. That's why it's so important when I look at people who have led me down the garden path. The path was always meant to be a garden path that I was meant to be led down. I don't think, and I don't regret any of the decisions that I've made. All I know is that if I learn from my mistakes, I'll break through even more.
100%. And I think it's like, that's exactly what you said to me, right? Like, you can't just always focus on the results, because then you will never get there. Because again, like, once you get to the result, then you've got another goal to get to anyway, so then you're just focusing on that, but you're never actually being and enjoying your life as well.
That's right. And so that's the state that you have to be. If you eventually, when you want to break through, it's not the doing, it's the state of beingness that actually is what we're here for. And that's intangible. It's something that's felt from the inside, and you feel good on the inside, and you're filling your cup up, and you're feeling good within you. So when you have those hard times, like I woke up with feeling that this was my thought this morning. I was like, I'm not getting anywhere, nothing's working, I'm useless. That was what I woke up with. And then I woke up with someone ruining my pity party this morning by saying, oh my God, you've changed my life, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, well, that ruined everything. And
thanks for ruining my pity party.
Yeah, that's right. And so the important aspect here around breakthrough is that is understanding, well, what do I want to listen to here? Again, someone else's voice took me out of where I was. Right? So I could have stayed in that all day and felt useless, or I listened to someone else's impact that they've received from me and have taken that on today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's a choice.
It is a choice, 100%. So listeners, hopefully this has helped around what it is to break through. Our academy is called the Wellness Breakthrough Academy, so that's the reason why I created the name Wellness, right? To actually do things in a way that actually builds psychological, emotional, physical well-being and spiritual. And breakthrough is to get you to break through that. And academy represents to educate you so you can do it yourself.
Because we've got some really cool and unique techniques here as well.
Yeah, we certainly do. All right, thanks for listening, guys, and hopefully you enjoy this one.
See you next time, Jace.
Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. We really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your time, because time is so valuable. What we'd love you guys to do, if you like this podcast, if you could share it with your friends, and also, our website address for the podcast is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademypodcast.com. Our website is www.wellnessbreakthroughacademy.com. We have a free Facebook group called Wellness Leadership Evolution, so search for that. I'd love it if you could add me as a friend on Facebook. I don't buy it, so add me as a friend. And if you want some help
and you would really like some support from us in the Academy, jump in. We have a process. You can do a break-in call to connect in with us. We do small courses. We have lots of things that we share. So we'd love the opportunity to give you a chance to change your life and turn it into a free one. You are one transformation away from change. Come and catch up.